In today's video, I want to talk to you about the necessary evil that is cash for keys. Let's dive right in. Please be sure to like as well as subscribe to the channel to get notified of new videos coming out. We have a new one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As always, I'm super active in the comments. Love to hear your thoughts if you disagree with me, as well as anything you'd like us to discuss in future videos. So diving right into cash for keys, what is it? So cash for keys is the process of paying a tenant to leave. This is kind of counterintuitive. Like, why would you give somebody money who owes you money to ask them to leave? And the reason for that is a lot of landlords will use this as kind of like the easy button to avoid an eviction. Now, I'm going to talk about why I think it's a horrible, horrible idea, and then when I can get on board. So for starters, I'm not a huge fan of cash for keys because I'm not a fan of rewarding bad behavior. Now, I'm not a parent yet. We actually just announced on Facebook and Instagram this week that I am going to be a dad. Super, super, super excited about it. Baby boy due in October. From the small amount I've done of reading into parenting, you're not supposed to reward bad behavior. Now, I realize I just paralleled tenants and children, but if you have any, maybe you can relate to that, right? So I think it's kind of a bad precedent to set of like, hey, if you get behind on your rent and start to struggle financially, well, your landlord will just cut you a check and you can take that and go somewhere else. I think it's really kind of a dangerous precedent to set, especially if you phrase it as like, hey, I'm giving you cash for keys, right? That's kind of a like landlord-esque term that, well, not something I want my residents becoming familiar with, right? If we have an eviction coming up, like, well, you could pay me to leave. Nah, I'd rather evict you, right? So for one, I'm not a fan of rewarding bad behavior, but two, I think you're also screwing over every other landlord in your market, right? When that person goes to try to rent from somebody new and they run an eviction background check, there isn't going to be anything because you paid them to leave, right? So for that reason alone, I'm not a huge fan of kind of the cash for keys negotiation or option. That being said, there is absolutely a time and place to use this tool, and that is if you are purchasing a property and trying to get it empty before close. So a lot of the times when we buy a property for cash, we'll take it, tenants, good, bad, and all. But occasionally we have a situation where we're like, no, this needs to be vacant before we can do the deal. And if I'm not trying to wait for the seller to get an eviction done, or if, evictions are not being allowed by the government for some reason, it's a potentially a good option to be able to speed up our ability to close on the property. So that's option number one. If I'm trying to help a seller get out of a distressed scenario where they really can't afford or don't want to wait to go through the eviction process, that's kind of the first place I'd use it. The kind of second and final place I would use it is anything that starts to look or feel a little bit more complicated. And what I mean by that, there's something known as adverse possession, which basically states that if a tenant or somebody has been living at the property for a certain amount of time, it could be construed that the property is theirs. They didn't buy it, they haven't maintained it, they haven't been helping out with rent or utilities or anything, but that's a potential legal issue you could run into. We're especially more apt to offer cash for keys when it's like an inheritance type of a situation and a family member, specifically one of the heirs, is living at the property. We're not trying to have this go to an eviction, have them get legal representation, and realize that they've got a better fight here than just the eviction. So in closing, it is kind of a tool that you want to have in the tool bag, but it's not one I recommend throwing out every single time you have a tenant get behind on rent or to avoid an eviction. It's really only something we use when we're helping a motivated seller, or if the occupant of the property potentially has a larger claim and we're trying to just get them out without too much of a fight. I hope this added value to your week. Be sure to like, subscribe, and as always, tell your friends. Thanks, talk to you next time.